On January 15th, 2026, one music legend paid tribute to another. Paul McCartney, the man who helped change music forever with the Beatles, took to Instagram to honor Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead's founding guitarist who had passed away just 5 days earlier. But this wasn't just another celebrity tribute post. What McCartney revealed was a story of friendship, mutual respect, and an unfulfilled collaboration that almost happened between two of rock's most iconic figures. The words he shared painted a picture of their final meeting that left fans of both legends heartbroken. This is the story of how two musical worlds, the Beatles' pop perfection and the Grateful Dead's improvisational genius, connected in the most human way possible. Background context: 0:45 more 3 more 30. To understand why Paul McCartney's tribute hit so hard, you need to understand the unique relationship between the Beatles and the Grateful Dead. On paper, these two bands couldn't have been more different. The Beatles were polished, stadium-filling pop revolutionaries who eventually retreated from live performance to focus on groundbreaking studio albums. The Grateful Dead were road warriors, jam band pioneers who built their entire legacy on live performance and communal experiences with their fans, the Deadheads. But as Bob Weir himself once said, the Beatles were why we turned from a jug band into a rock and roll band. What we saw them doing was impossibly attractive. I couldn't think of anything else more worth doing. American songwriter. The story of Bob Weir and Paul McCartney begins in two very different places. McCartney, by 1963, was already on his way to global superstardom with the Beatles. Meanwhile, on New Year's Eve of that same year, a 16-year-old Bob Weir wandered the streets of Palo Alto, California, looking for a club that would admit him despite being underage. He heard banjo music coming from Dana Morgan's music store. Inside, he met Jerry Garcia, and they played music together all night. By morning, they had decided to form a band, Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions. That jug band would eventually become the Grateful Dead, one of the most influential bands in American music history. And while the Beatles inspired them to go electric and embrace rock and roll, the two bands' paths rarely crossed directly during the 1960s. The Beatles were conquering the world and then retreating into the studio to create Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The Grateful Dead were becoming the house band for Ken Kesey's infamous acid tests, defining the San Francisco psychedelic scene and building a following through relentless touring. The main story event 3:30 there. On January 10, 2026, Bob Weir died peacefully at age 78, surrounded by loved ones after courageously beating cancer but ultimately succumbing to underlying lung issues. Variety. Bob Weir. He had been diagnosed with cancer in July 2025, just weeks before Dead & Company played 3 shows at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco to celebrate the Grateful Dead's 60th anniversary. Variety. Those performances would be his final public appearances. The music world immediately erupted with tributes. California Governor Gavin Newsom called him a true son of California. The Empire State Building lit up in tie-dye colors. Fans gathered spontaneously to share memories and play Dead songs. But 5 days later, on January 15th, Paul McCartney's tribute stood out. Bob Weir was a great musician who inspired many people of many generations. McCartney wrote on Instagram, Rolling Stone. He included a photo from 2016 showing the two of them sharing a laugh at McCartney's Boston concert, where Weir had joined him on stage for renditions of Wings' Hi 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 and the Beatles' Helter Skelter. That guest appearance marked the first time they had shared a stage, and at the time, McCartney had celebrated it with another post saying, Grateful Beatle. But then McCartney revealed something fans didn't know. I last saw Bob when we went to the Sphere in Las Vegas to watch Dead & Co., McCartney wrote. He was very welcoming, and during the interval in the show, he invited us into his trailer, and it was a special moment to meet his family and friends. Rolling Stone. This is where the story gets truly poignant. During that visit to the Sphere, where Dead & Company had been performing their residency in one of the most technologically advanced venues in the world, Weir showed McCartney something personal. He showed McCartney the recording setup he had in the back of his tour bus, so that even while on the road, he could make and record music. McCartney offered to play bass on one of the tracks Weir played for him, but unfortunately, that collaboration never came to pass. Rolling Stone. How the person responded. 7:9. McCartney's response to Weir's death wasn't just formal condolences. It was deeply personal. He didn't just acknowledge Weir's talent. He spoke about his humor, his friendship, his musicianship. His humor, friendship, and musicianship inspired me and will inspire many people into the future, McCartney wrote. Our family's thoughts go out to Bob's family at this time of loss, and I know they will remain as strong as he would wish them to be. God bless you, Bob. See you down the road. Love, Paul. Guitar World. That phrase, see you down the road, is quintessentially Dead language. It's the way Deadheads say goodbye, acknowledging that the journey continues, that you'll meet again somewhere along the endless tour that is life. For McCartney to use this language showed how deeply he understood and respected the Grateful Dead's culture and philosophy. Paul McCartney didn't have to share these personal memories. He could have issued a simple statement, but instead he painted a picture of two aging rock legends, still curious about each other's work, still excited about making music, still finding joy in sharing their craft. That image of Weir in his tour bus, showing McCartney his mobile recording setup, is incredibly moving. Here was a man who, even while battling cancer and pushing through what would be his final performances, was still thinking about the next song, the next recording, the next creative collaboration. The real facts and truth. 9R 1130. Let's talk about what made this relationship and this moment so significant. The connection between the Beatles and the Grateful Dead runs deeper than most people realize. In the mid-1960s, while they operated in different spheres, they were connected by the same cultural moment and even some of the same people. Photographer Linda Eastman, who would later become Linda McCartney when she married Paul in 1969, took early portraits of Bob Weir and the Grateful Dead in San Francisco in the mid to late 1960s. She was documenting the same musical revolution from both coasts. The Grateful Dead never hid their love for the Beatles. They regularly covered Beatles songs in their shows as the years went on. The influence was direct and acknowledged, but it went beyond mere admiration. As Bob Weir explained in his 2014 Netflix documentary, I guess I was officially done with school when I ran off with the Merry Pranksters. It was the night of my second Beatles concert. I was high on acid at the time. Live for live music. That moment, experiencing the Beatles while on LSD, helped set the course for Weir's entire life and career. It wasn't just about the music. It was about the possibility of what music could be, what it could do to consciousness, how it could create community. When they finally did collaborate professionally at that 2016 Boston show, it was electric. Here were two guitarists from opposite ends of the rock spectrum, McCartney's melodic precision and Weir's intricate jazz-influenced rhythm playing, coming together to perform songs that bridged their worlds. The chemistry was real, which makes the unfulfilled collaboration at the Sphere all the more heartbreaking. The Sphere residency that McCartney attended was itself historic. Dead & Company had performed a 30-date residency at the Las Vegas Sphere between May and August 2024, using the venue's incredible technology to create immersive visual experiences that perfectly complemented their improvisational music. It was one of the most successful residencies ever played at the venue, and it represented the Dead's music reaching new technological heights while staying true to its experimental spirit. Analysis. 1330. So why does this story matter? Why does Paul McCartney's tribute resonate so powerfully? First, it humanizes two larger-than-life figures. We tend to think of people like Paul McCartney and Bob Weir as mythical beings, untouchable legends. But McCartney's tribute reveals them as working musicians who genuinely admired each other's craft, who got excited about recording setups and potential collaborations, who shared laughs and made time for each other's families. The image of Weir inviting McCartney into his trailer during intermission, showing him his mobile studio, offering to work together. This is the behavior of passionate artists who never lost their love for the creative process. Second, it highlights the missed opportunity. That potential collaboration, McCartney playing bass on a Bob Weir track, would have been a dream for fans of both artists. It represents the thousands of collaborations that could have happened in music history but didn't, whether due to timing, logistics, or tragically, death. Knowing that Weir was still working on music, still excited about new recordings even while battling cancer, makes it clear this wasn't just talk. It was real intent that simply ran out of time. Third, McCartney's tribute demonstrates the interconnectedness of rock history. The Grateful Dead inspired by the Beatles. The Beatles photographer documenting the Dead. McCartney and Weir finally sharing a stage decades later. McCartney visiting the Sphere to watch Dead & Company. These connections show that rock and roll, for all its different genres and scenes, is ultimately one continuous conversation between artists who respect and inspire each other. Their actual achievements: 13, 30, 15, 30 years. Let's not forget what Bob Weir actually accomplished in his 78 years. It was a chance encounter with Jerry Garcia in that Palo Alto music store on New Year's Eve 1963 that started one of the most important friendships in rock history. NBC News. Together, they created the Grateful Dead, a band that didn't just make music, they created a lifestyle, a community, a movement. Weir played rhythm guitar and sang many of the band's rock and roll and country and western songs throughout the Dead's 30-year career. Wikipedia, his rhythm guitar style was unique, influenced by hard bop pianist McCoy Tyner, incorporating chord voicings that sounded more like keyboard work. Phil Lesh, the Dead's bassist, once described his playing as quirky, whimsical, and goofy, while also being astonished and delighted by his musical choices. Weir wrote or co-wrote many of the Grateful Dead's most beloved songs: Sugar Magnolia, Truckin', Playing in the Band, One More Saturday Night, Cassidy, and Weather Report Suite. These songs became anthems for multiple generations of Deadheads and remain staples of American rock music. After Jerry Garcia's death in 1995 disbanded the original Grateful Dead, Weir could have retired on his legacy. Instead, he became the prime mover in keeping the band's music alive. He performed with the other ones, later known as the Dead. He formed his own bands, Kingfish, the Bob Weir Band, Bobby, and the Midnights, Scaring the Children, Rat Dog, Further, and Bobby Weir and Wolf Browers. In 2015, Weir joined with former Grateful Dead members Mickey Hart and Bill Kreutzmann, along with singer-guitarist John Mayer, bassist Oteil Burbridge, and keyboardist Jeff Chimenti to form Dead & Company. This lineup became one of the highest-grossing touring acts in America, proving that the Dead's music could still fill stadiums and speak to new generations. Weir received the 2016 Lifetime Achievement Award at the Americana Honors and Awards and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Grateful Dead. Wikipedia. He also received Kennedy Center honors, but perhaps more importantly, he maintained the vision that Jerry Garcia had started, that music could be a communal experience, that improvisation could create magic, and that the relationship between a band and its audience could be something sacred. Bigger lessons and takeaways. 1530.17. What can we learn from Paul McCartney's tribute to Bob Weir? First, genuine admiration transcends competition. McCartney and Weir represented different approaches to rock music, but McCartney never saw Weir as a rival. He saw him as a fellow traveler, a musician who had devoted his life to the craft, someone whose work inspired him. In an industry often driven by ego and competition, their mutual respect stands out. Second, it's never too late to collaborate, except when it is. The heartbreak of that unfulfilled collaboration reminds us not to wait. If there's someone you want to work with, create with, or simply spend time with, do it now. Weir and McCartney finally shared a stage in 2016, when Weir was 68 and McCartney was 74. They had decades of careers behind them, but they still found joy in playing together. Yet even meeting at the Sphere, even planning to collaborate, time ran out. Don't let time run out on your important connections. Third, legacy is about more than your own work. It's about what you inspire in others. Weir once said the Beatles made him want to turn from a jug band into a rock and roll band because what he saw them doing was impossibly attractive. American songwriter. Now, multiple generations of musicians say the same thing about the Grateful Dead. Bob Weir didn't just make music, he showed people what was possible when you approached music with fearlessness, curiosity, and community spirit. Fourth, keep creating until the end. Even while battling cancer, even during what would be his final performances, Bob Weir was still recording in the back of his tour bus, still excited about new music, still offering to collaborate. That passion for creation, that refusal to stop exploring musically, even when his body was failing, that's the mark of a true artist. Conclusion, 17-18. Bob Weir's family said it best in their statement, and so we send him off the way he sent so many of us on our way, with a farewell that isn't an ending, but a blessing. Bob Weir. When Paul McCartney wrote, "See you down the road" at the end of his tribute, he was acknowledging something the Grateful Dead always understood. The music doesn't end. It continues in the recordings, in the memories, in the musicians who were inspired, in the fans who carry the songs forward. There's a public gathering planned for January 17th at San Francisco's Civic Center Plaza to honor Bob Weir, a free event that captures the spirit of community that the Grateful Dead always fostered. McCartney probably won't be there, but his words have already reached millions, reminding us all of what we lost and what we still have. Two legends from different worlds, connected by their love of music, their respect for each other's artistry, and their understanding that rock and roll, at its best, is about connection, joy, and the endless journey down that long, strange road. Bob Weir may have played his final show, but as his family said, there's no final curtain here, only the sense of someone setting off again. And somewhere down the road, as Paul McCartney promised, they'll meet again. Rest in peace, Bob Weir. The music plays on.